She wore sweatpants and carried a backpack, so they kicked her out of first class. If only they knew who she really was. The buzz of conversation and echoing footsteps filled Gate C11 of Everwind Airlines terminal at Denver International Airport. A tall blonde woman walked with measured calm through the sea of hurried travelers. Her dark gray hoodie hung loosely around her shoulders, and her light gray joggers were paired with simple white sneakers. A well-worn backpack bounced lightly on her shoulder. To most people, Claire Dawson looked like any other casual traveler. No makeup, no designer bags, no visible jewelry, except for a slim silver bracelet. But what no one saw was the reality underneath. Claire was not just anyone. She held a Ph.D. in environmental science, was a speaker at UN sustainability conferences, and, most notably, was the wife of Jonathan Dawson, founder and CEO of Everwind Airlines, a rising star in the luxury aviation industry. Claire never liked using her last name to influence things. When she flew, she booked under her maiden name, Claire Whitman, and she dressed as she pleased. To her, comfort and dignity mattered more than appearances, and today's flight to Boston was personal. Her sister's wedding weekend. She had a first-class ticket, booked weeks in advance. Jonathan had offered their private jet, but she declined. "I want to feel normal for once," she'd told him with a smile. Like everyone else? He had kissed her forehead and said, "Then go and be normal. Just promise me you'll call if anything weird happens." Claire now stood in line for boarding. The gate agent, a young woman named Ashley, scanned boarding passes with robotic efficiency. When Claire approached, she offered a polite smile and handed over her phone. Ashley's eyes dropped to the screen, then flicked back up. Her smile faltered, just slightly. "First class?" she asked. "Yes," Claire said simply. Ashley scanned the pass, nodded, and muttered, "Enjoy your flight." Before looking over Claire's shoulder at the next passenger, Claire walked down the jet bridge with no clue that the quiet storm was already brewing. Inside the plane, Everwind's signature first-class cabin shimmered with luxury. Leather seats the color of deep ocean blue, polished brass fixtures, soft lighting calibrated for relaxation. It looked like the inside of a modern yacht, floating through clouds. Claire found her seat, 1A, by the window, and gently placed her backpack overhead before settling in. She pulled out a paperback novel, folded one leg under the other, and let out a satisfied breath. Then came the pause. From the galley, Megan, the lead flight attendant, emerged. Her uniform was pristine, her bun tight, her expression unreadable. She saw Claire, frowned briefly, and approached. "Ma'am," she said, with cool politeness, "may I see your boarding pass?" Claire looked up, confused but cooperative. "Sure." She showed her phone again. Megan glanced at it, then at Claire. Her eyes narrowed. "One moment, please." She walked briskly to the front, where she conferred with another flight attendant, Brett, a tall man with perfect posture and a clipped tone. Claire noticed them both looking at her and whispering. Other first-class passengers were now sneaking glances. Megan returned, this time with Brett at her side. "I'm sorry, Miss Whitman," Brett began, "but there seems to be a system error. This seat is marked for an upgrade we haven't finalized." Claire blinked. "That's strange. I bought this ticket weeks ago." "Do you have ID?" Megan asked. Claire's lips tightened. "I already showed my boarding pass." "You scanned it. The gate agent let me through." "Yes, but we sometimes experience fraud," Brett added. "We just need to confirm everything." Claire exhaled slowly, realizing this wasn't about a system error. This was about how she looked. The woman across the aisle, clearly a socialite, dressed in cream silk and diamond studs, looked over and smirked. A man 2 seats down muttered something about standards slipping. Claire stood her ground. "I am in the right seat," she said, her voice firm but calm. "I don't see anyone else being asked for ID." Megan forced a smile. "It's just a precaution that you only apply to people like me." Claire asked, "What is it? My hoodie? My lack of Louis Vuitton?" Brett shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, if you can't produce ID, we'll have to ask you to move to economy until we can verify it." Claire's eyes met his. "And if I don't, we'll ask you to deplane." Silence. Claire slowly reached for her backpack. "Fine," she said. "I'll move. but I want both of your names. And your badge numbers? Other passengers pretended not to watch, but they were. One older man looked at her with sympathy. A younger woman mouthed, "I'm sorry," as Claire passed. She took the humiliating walk down the aisle, led by Megan, past the curious eyes of economy class, her dignity intact, but her heart pounding. Back in the gate area, Jonathan Dawson stared at his phone. He had just received Claire's text. "They pulled me out of the first class. Said I didn't belong. Don't be angry. Just meet me at the Boston Hotel." Jonathan stood, slipped his phone into his blazer pocket, and walked to the window. He looked out at his airline's logo on the tail fin of the plane his wife had just been escorted off of. He said nothing, but his eyes narrowed. Jonathan Dawson wasn't a man who acted impulsively. His success had come not from flair or theatrics, but from measured precision and strategic decisions. At 39, he had built Everwind Airlines into a rising force in luxury aviation, a brand praised for its inclusivity, innovation, and elite service. And yet, as he stood watching one of his jets taxi away from the gate with his wife sitting somewhere in economy class, after being humiliated for how she looked, he felt a rare heat crawl beneath his collar. Not rage, but something colder. Purpose. He pulled out his phone again, this time not to message Claire, but to call someone else entirely. "Harper," he said when the call connected. "I need a list of every crew member assigned to Flight 605 to Boston. Cabin crew, gate, and anyone in the command chain for first class." Harper Reynolds, his sharp as steel chief of staff, replied instantly, "Already on it. ETA 10 minutes. You want them suspended?" "No," Jonathan said. "I want them present at headquarters tomorrow morning, full uniform." Harper paused, then understood. "Copy that." Claire landed in Boston late that evening. She didn't speak much on the ride to the hotel. Jonathan didn't push. She sat beside him in the car, looking out the window, fingers curled tightly around the same silver bracelet she'd worn for years. It had belonged to her mother. When they got to the suite, she spoke first. "I'm not angry," she said quietly. "Just tired." Jonathan nodded. "I didn't tell them who I was," she added. "I know Washti. You never would." She looked at him now. "But they need to learn, not just for me, for every person they've judged and dismissed." He took her hand. "They will." The next morning at Everwind headquarters, the atmosphere was tense. A conference room that typically hosted executive strategy sessions was now arranged with 3 chairs on one side and a half circle of board members and department heads on the other. In the middle stood a presentation screen that read, "Passenger Experience Review. Urgent update." Harper stood at the door, greeting those arriving. Megan, Brett, and Ashley entered together, all wearing crisp Everwind uniforms. They didn't know why they had been summoned. "Maybe a new premium service rollout," Brett whispered. "Probably feedback training," Megan replied. "We're some of the highest-rated crew on the route." Ashley said nothing. She had replayed her moment at the gate with Claire a dozen times. Something about it didn't sit right. When the room settled, Jonathan Dawson entered. If anyone still thought this was a training session, the illusion vanished. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't angry. He was still. A man with presence. "Thank you all for being here," he began. "This morning's agenda is simple. We are going to talk about identity, perception, and accountability." He gestured to the screen. "This is a transcript of an incident that took place yesterday on Flight 605. A first-class passenger with a valid ticket was asked to move due to, as staff described, a possible system error and appearance-based confusion." The screen flicked through bullet points, direct quotes pulled from security footage. Megan's face drained of color. Jonathan continued, "The passenger's ID was not requested during check-in. It was only questioned once she sat in seat 1A. No policy was breached by her, no rules violated, but she was treated differently." He paused. "Now I'd like to introduce that passenger." The side door opened. Claire walked in, still in her gray hoodie, still in sweatpants, still wearing that silver bracelet. Megan stiffened. Brett's jaw dropped. Ashley went pale. Claire walked to the center of the room, looked each of them in the eye, then turned to the board. "I'm not here as a victim," she said. "I'm here as a mirror. What happened to me happens to others. Every day." I was just one story lucky enough to be noticed. She pointed at the screen. Bias isn't always loud. It's in the quiet assumptions, the looks, the doubts. We can't fix everything overnight. But if Everwind Airlines wants to be the brand it claims to be, we start here. Today, silence held for a long moment. Jonathan stepped beside her. Part 3 will be change, he said, but Part 2 is awareness. He turned to the staff. We're not here to fire you. We're here to educate you, but this will be the hardest flight you've ever taken. The room was still frozen as Claire stepped back beside her husband. Jonathan took a measured breath. This isn't about public shaming. This is about culture, and today we address it. He nodded toward Harper, who passed folders to each of the 3 staff members, Megan, Brett, and Ashley, and then to several department heads seated along the back. Inside, summaries of passenger complaints filed over the past 12 months. Many had been closed as inconclusive, but the pattern was impossible to ignore. Claire spoke again. You judged me for wearing sweatpants. What about the teenager in a hoodie who got double-checked for a business class ticket? The elderly woman redirected from the lounge. The man in a wheelchair told he didn't belong in the fast lane. Brett looked down. Megan shifted uncomfortably. Ashley swallowed. This isn't about me. Claire continued. I'm here because I could speak, but so many can't, or don't. Jonathan turned to the full group. Starting today, Everwind Airlines will roll out a mandatory anti-bias training program for all frontline and in-flight employees. And this isn't some checkbox seminar. This is immersive, experiential, and ongoing. He continued, we're also overhauling our feedback platform. No more auto responses, no more soft deletes. Every passenger voice will be heard and escalated when patterns emerge. Patricia, head of customer experience, nodded slowly from her seat. We'll begin by auditing all flagged reports from the last 6 months. Jonathan looked back at the crew. You 3 won't be terminated, but you will lead by example. 1 month serving economy flights. 1 month assisting our advocacy team, listening to the very voices we too often dismiss. Megan opened her mouth to respond, then paused. Understood. Brett nodded, quieter than usual. Ashley's eyes glistened slightly, but she spoke clearly. We can do better. Claire smiled, not out of victory, but because she saw something she hadn't expected. Willingness. 3 months later, Claire boarded another Everwind flight, again in sweatpants and a hoodie, again with just a backpack. She took her seat in 1A. Welcome aboard, Dr. Whitman, came a familiar voice. It was Ashley, now reassigned to first class. No ID required. Claire teased. Ashley smiled warmly. Just the boarding pass. Ma'am, in my respect. Claire's grin softened. Glad to hear it? As she settled into her seat, she glanced across the aisle. A teenager with blue hair and ripped jeans was being offered sparkling water without hesitation. An older man with a service dog was being assisted by a crew member with gentle care. Progress didn't always come in dramatic moments. It came in these quiet, consistent shifts in how people chose to treat one another. At 30,000 feet, the view was clear, and so, finally, was the culture